Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for a presentation from our county commissioner and good friend of mine, Gerald Daugherty. He's going to talk to us about our mobility, our future, talking about Prop A today. As a reminder, I'm Trey Salinas and joined with Talia Hill. We're with 3 Point Partners, public affairs firm here in Austin. We represent BOMA on city of Austin and county issues here locally for you folks. So we're really enjoying the opportunity to get to better know BOMA. I want to get right into it today, and I'm going to introduce you to Gerald Daugherty, tell you a little bit about him for those of you that don't know. I've actually known Gerald Daugherty since about 1994, like 93 or 94, when I worked for the mayor of Austin at that time, a guy named Bruce Todd. And Gerald was a very successful small business owner in town that was very active politically and on public policy issues, especially with regards to transportation and in particular Capital Metro. Over the years, after Gerald sold his business, he ran for county commissioner, and he's been in elected office for around 18 years at Travis County. He has been the absolute, in my opinion, go-to guy on transportation and economic development. This entire time. He's been a true friend of the business community. He's been a true friend of property owners, residential, commercial, you name it. He is always about trying to keep property taxes as low as possible. But I also want to not just mention that. I'm serious when I talk about the economic development piece. There's been, other than a couple of mayors, there's been no better friend, elected official wise, in Travis County than Gerald Daugherty for economic development and helping create jobs. The most recently would be the Tesla deal that we're all very excited about, that is under construction. Gerald Daugherty was a driving force in that plant happening here. Even though it's not in his precinct, Gerald was front and center with the County Commissioners Court, making sure we got Tesla. And so we thank him for that. Gerald leaves office, I think on January 1st. He's not running again. He's served enough of his sentence, as he likes to say. He's going to enjoy the private sector, but I'm sure Gerald will still be very involved in our community and very involved in community issues. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Gerald so that he can talk about Prop A and his PAC that is opposed to Proposition A, the Project Connect issue.
Trey, thank you very much, and thanks to BOMA for hosting this. And I understand that tomorrow y'all are probably going to get to hear from the Project Connect folks, and I think that that's great because I think that everybody needs to hear both sides of a story, and I think this is the best format to do it, where each of us have our own time, so to speak, so that we're not having to counterpoint. We can, I'm sure y'all will take copious notes, and really by after tomorrow, I hope, couch some sort of an opinion from y'all's standpoint. I do understand. I think that Amy told me that BOMA may not be having an official position on this. That's probably not my first choice, but it's certainly better than a poke in the eye with a sharp stick. So I'll just live with that. Even if I can't get an endorsement from BOMA to vote against Prop A, I think that I'm going to have enough information that's going to make people think really long and hard before they go down the pathway of supporting this.
Gerald, real quick, one thing, and I apologize for interrupting, but before you start your presentation, one thing I failed to mention, and I apologize, we want to strongly encourage everybody that's viewing today to use the chat feature for any feedback or questions, because after Gerald is done with his presentation, we're going to do a Q&A portion. Sorry about that.
All right. No problem. Let me start with just a little bit of history, because I certainly am aware that I have a reputation in town for being the most critical of Capital Metro. Always have a lot of issues with what we are or are not doing with mobility and transportation. But let's just get this out of the way. I am a huge supporter of public transportation. In 1985, when Capital Metro was created, I was one of the folks, and quite frankly, surprising to some people, that went out and promoted the creation of Cap Metro. And the reason that I did is because every major metropolitan area needs public transportation. There, without question, you have got to have public transportation. When we created Cap Metro, we created it with the discretionary, one of the two discretionary pennies that each city has in the state of Texas. And, you know, if I had it to do over again, y'all, I would still vote for the creation of a transit authority. I might not call it Capital Metro, and I probably wouldn't vote to give them the full penny of sales tax, which is what we gave them because we thought we were doing the right thing. But that being said, just know that public transportation is something that I've always supported, I will always support. But here is where I diverge from just being totally, that I totally embrace the things that Capital Metro does. I firmly believe that one of the biggest issues that we have is Capital Metro continues to what I consider taking their eye off of the ball with doing what they really ought to be doing. And what they really ought to be doing is spending their 1 penny sales tax. And y'all, their 1 penny sales tax, by the way, this year, this past full year gave them around $260 million. Since 1985, Capital Metro has collected over $4.4 billion. A lot of money, y'all, $4.4 billion. That's not the most amazing thing to me, though. The most amazing thing is that if you know their the statistics about what public transit has done over the last 30 years, I think that you will begin to see why I have a real issue with thinking that we should allow the city to in turn, you know, effectively turn over a $7.1 billion transit plan to Capital Metro. $7.1 billion, and that's just the start of this transit plan. Everybody knows what I have probably the biggest issue with Cap Metro is their insistence on wanting to build a light rail system. Y'all, if light rail worked, I would be all over it because I really know this subject matter. If you just let's just take the basic ridership that Capital Metro has and what has happened since, let's just go back to 1990. They were created in 85. It took them 4 or 5 years to get it out of the ground. But if you go back to 1990, that's 30 years ago, Capital Metro's ridership numbers were around 31 million boardings. They call them riders, they're boardings, a year. So in 1990, 31 million boardings. In 2019, effectively 30 years, 29 to 30 years, guess what the ridership was in 2019? 31 million. So, I mean, the first time that somebody looks at that, they think that it's a typo. I mean, you can't be in business for 30 years, spend over $4.4 billion and not grow your ridership numbers. Here's the most amazing thing about that. The population has doubled in the last 30 years. So you got a population that doubles, you spend $4 billion on, you know, Cap Metro's operations. That doesn't include, you know, a lot of their capital costs because they get a lot of federal dollars on top of the 1 penny sales tax. But when people say, well, why is it that you really seem to have a problem with what Capital Metro is wanting to do now. Well, my basic problem is if you have 30 years, you have a doubling of population, you have over $4.4 billion, it's pretty obvious to me that, and this is not Capital Metro's fault. It's not like you can put a gun to everybody's head and say, you got to leave your car at home and you got to get on public transit. It's not their fault that you can't get people into public transit. What we have in public transit today, y'all, is we have somewhere between 3.5% and 4% of our population that use public transit on a daily, ongoing basis. Now, if I thought that in 30 years you were continuing to grow that, then you might get me to listen to what you might be wanting to do as we go forward. Y'all, this $7.1 billion plan, 80+% of it is to build 2 light rail lines, an orange line and a blue line. Now, bear in mind, y'all, we have a light rail line right now. It's called the Red Line. It goes from Leander to the Convention Center. Now, you need to understand what that one carries. That carries about 1,500 people a day. That's 3,000 boardings, because if you get on it, where you get on it and you get off where you're going and you go back to where you started, you got to divide that by 2. So that's the reason that 3,000 boardings is really 1,500 people. The 1,500 people, you think, well, I mean, that's 1,500 people. Well, they generated last year $1 million out of the fare box for their 1,500 people. The third-party operator, Cap Metro, doesn't even operate the Red Line, and they probably won't operate the orange and the blue line. But the third-party operator charged them last year over $19 million to operate the system that had 1,500 people and collected $1 million. So, y'all, I'm too much of a small business guy. I mean, I have to do things that make sense. I mean, when I opened Jack Allen's Kitchen with my partners back in 2010, we had to make really good decisions. I mean, we were trying to get something out of the ground. We had to be frugal with what we were doing, and we had to stay on point. We had to really do what we felt like you needed to do to get a restaurant out of the ground. What I want Capital Metro to do is to stop being preoccupied with rail, which is, quite frankly, the least flexible mode of transportation that you can really come up with, and concentrate on running a good, cost-effective, robust bus system. A bus system is the best way to carry people around publicly. And why? Number one, it's the most cost-effective way. And number 2, it is the most flexible mode of transportation. And flexibility in public transportation is paramount. Fixed guideway / rail, call it whatever you want, that does not have that. It's never going to have it. The rail riderships that people come back to town after they've gone to the Northeast, or they've gone to Tokyo, or they've gone to Paris, or you name it, and they come back and go, oh, well, my God, I mean, we need to have a system like that. That's not how we live in the United States, unless, of course, you live in the Northeast, where you have population densities that really turn public transit into mass transit, that we, quite frankly, y'all, are never going to have, because no one wants to densify. We live 2,500 to 3,000 people per square mile. Mass transit has 25 to 30,000 people per square mile, but you have to want to live on top of each other. Just follow the Austin Neighborhood Council, follow all of the fights that the city is having with ANC, because ANC will tell you, we don't want to change the characters of our neighborhoods. That's not what we want to do. But, with Cap Metro marching down this road with this $7.1 billion that is mostly money spent on rail, and of course, a subway tunnel under the city of Austin, and you go figure that out. I will say, if you know anything about building something and building it subterraneanly, you better get ready to have cost overruns that you never thought that you were going to have. Cap Metro really doesn't have a lot of answers to that. There's not a lot of specificity about, what they will do, how they will pay for overruns. But the 7.1 billion, y'all, is the start of what they want to do. Now let's talk about what I really have a heartburn over. The $7.1 billion will raise City of Austin property taxes by 24.5 to 26.2%. Now, if somebody brings that up tomorrow, they're going to say, oh, well, that's not really right. It's only a 4%. And I usually have to bring out the ad that was in the American Statesman that they had to publish that came out at the 1st of August, and is titled Notice of Public Hearing on Tax Increase. If you read all the way down the ad and you get to the bottom of the page, it talks about in 2019, the property tax rate in the city of Austin was 0.4431. If you pass this $7.1 billion, that will take the property tax to 0.5335. The difference between the 4431 and the 5335 is 20%. And the city has already taken and bumped their rate from zero amount up to the 3.5 amount that Senate Bill 2 last session says you can't go above 3.5 above effective tax rate unless you have a vote of the people. Well, the city budget went up to the 3.5 because that's what they said. And then if you add this 8 3/4 cent onto it, that's an additional 20%. That's where you get the 24% if you put those two together. Y'all, I don't know about y'all, but I am talking to businesses. I'm talking to my partners in the restaurant business. And we are hanging on every business that or most businesses that I know, not every, most businesses that I know of are barely hanging on, trying to figure out, we've got 6 to 9 more months of this pandemic, most likely. Could have more than 9 months. Why in the world would you go out and promote a tax increase for the city of Austin tax rate up to the 25% increase? Why would you do that in the middle of a pandemic when you have no idea who is going to be left standing in the next 6, 9, 12 months? I mean, I just find that incredulous that the city and Cap Metro would be out promoting this kind of a tax increase during the most uncertain time that I've ever been in Austin, Texas, and I've been here 50 years. There is no indication, y'all, that public transit ridership is going to grow any more than it grew in 30 years, which was flat. I mean, here's the interesting thing, when people say, well, you got to do something about the traffic. If you look at all of the alternative modes of getting from point A to point B, other than the automobile, other than the single occupant automobile, you can put everything in there that you want. You can put walking, you can put biking, you can put scootering. Now, if you put telework right now has over 8% of the folks using it that are no longer in their car. 8. And the reports that I am reading are talking about anywhere from 12 to perhaps 25% of the people may stay teleworking after the pandemic. at least we ought to be going, why don't we see what the pandemic is actually going to do for us? So we probably need a couple of years, because if we come out of this thing next year, you're still going to need another year just to try to get things out of the ditch. But y'all, there is not a rosy picture that you can paint for this thing if you are trying to be practical and realistic. I think that if people in this community know that your city taxes, and the reason that I accent that, here is what people need to understand. And this is what the city of Austin and Cap Metro likes to throw out there. Well, it's really not a 20 to a 20, you pick the number 20 to 24%. It's really not that. It's really only about a 4%. The way that they get the 4% calculation, everybody gets one tax bill. Your tax bill has, number one, AISD, which is about 55 to 57% of your tax bill. If you're in the city of Austin, that equates to about 15 to 17% of your tax bill. Your county taxes are 15 to 17%. Then you have ACC taxes that come in at about 8%. And then you have your healthcare district that rounds out the 100%. So what Cap Metro and the city is saying is, well, the fact that the city taxes are going up by 24.5%, in the scheme of things on your whole tax bill, that's only 4%. And I go, I'm trying to figure out how in the heck to keep my city taxes down. I mean, 4 of our 6 restaurants, 4 Jack Allen's, 2 Salt Traders, 4 of those 6 are in the city of Austin. And I will tell you, folks, I mean, we are barely making it right now, and we're not making any money. We're just trying to pay our bills. We pay our bills as long as our landlords work with us. And landlords, one of the things that you got to make sure of is that your tenants understand that every one of them pays triple net. They're the ones that are paying this extra money, because most of the property owners, they just pass that along in triple net payments. Folks, I can't take a 25% increase in my city property taxes. I don't think there are very many people that can. Some of these numbers are staggering. It's enough that it's large enough for the residential people to go, what are you talking about? I mean, I can barely pay my taxes right now, much less seeing one of my line items, the city of Austin taxes, going up by 25%. Y'all, this is a really bad plan. There is no indication whatsoever that people are going to leave their car and get on public transportation. They may leave their car, but they're going to telework. They're going to walk. I mean, downtown, look at the density that we have downtown. I mean, we probably got somewhere between 15 and 17,000 people that live downtown. The most effective way to get around downtown is to walk. I mean, now you got these crazy scooters that run up and down the streets, running over us. I mean, on the sidewalks and all of that business. You got a few people that bike, but not very many. The unfortunate thing is we are a society where the automobile is king. It's going to be king for a long time. But we are the places where people are at least parking their cars or not taking them. That is being replaced much more by technology. Look at what Uber and Lyft has done. I mean, Uber and Lyft has changed the dynamics of how people travel. But Uber and Lyft really blow past public transportation. Why? Because it's curb to curb. That's the reason that is so popular. And what is a great thing about Uber and Lyft? It's private. There's not one penny of public dollars into that technology. Those are the kind of things that we are going to, the technology world is what's going to take over the basic movement of how we do things. By the time you build this crazy plan that they're wanting to do, they'll tell you it's 10 to 20 years out. 10 to 20 years, it's obsolete before it's complete. I mean, it makes no sense whatsoever. I'm going to hush because I'm going to get some Q&A. You're going to get told a whole lot of fancy, fluffy stuff tomorrow, but bottom line, this is something that they're selling, that public transit ridership is flat at best and going down with a lot of cost to it, and it only starts the project, and they have no way of telling you how many additional tax dollars it's going to take to just operate the system. So Trey, let's stop and let's answer some questions.
Do that. Gerald, thank you very much for that presentation. A few questions that have been sent to me, and then a few in the chat. And again, everybody, if you'd like to submit a question, you can either text me, as a couple of people have, or put it on the chat room. First question is not a question, it's a comment from Lisa Hensley to everybody, especially you, Gerald, thanking you for everything you've done for Austin. I meant what I said earlier in my introduction about this city owes a great deal to you, and we're going to miss you when you leave. Lisa also has a question. How is the city going to get past all their own obstructive environmental policies to be able to construct this from an engineering standpoint?
Well, Trey, I mean, you've been in this business, in the business that you're in for a lot of years, about working with the city, working through their process. You and I both know, I mean, that when the city wants something, I mean, it's a lot easier to get something done, and especially if the city's doing it themselves. That's not to say that they pitch environmental, issues to the wind, because, I mean, I'll give them that. I mean, they try to walk the walk. They will have, a lot of issues getting past certain permits, just like everyone else does. You can do that. It just costs you a lot of money and it costs you a lot of time. They will have issues. We all know they have issues. I mean, if you're going to put a hole in the ground under the city of Austin, and they're saying it's somewhere between 60 and 70 foot deep. I think you're going to probably have some seepage from, the lake. I mean, but you can deal with those things. So they can deal with them. They're not going to be easy, but they won't necessarily stop things. They'll just make things much more expensive.
Right. Gerald, another question is if you could kind of tell us about how this 45% on the federal funding, how is that guaranteed? One question from Mark Crone, the group is, are we putting the cart before the horse? Because if it's not granted, then what happens?
Well, I don't think they're going to get 45%, Trey. When they did the red line back in 2006, they told us it was going to be $90 million to do it. They were going to get 50% from the feds. They got zero from the feds. If you know anything about FTA, Federal Transit Authority, because that's where their dollars flow from, is the Federal Transit Authority. They are hemorrhaging for dollars in the FTA because their dollars come from the gasoline sales tax. And the gasoline sales tax has been flat for the last several years. And why? Because the automobile gets 28 miles to the gallon today, and they used to get 16 miles to the gallon. Then by the time you throw in electric, now there's not a large percentage. Tesla, that, as you had mentioned earlier, they're probably going to try to make a dent in that. So your funding mechanism for how you fund roads and you fund transit, I think is going to be severely strained. But hey, here's the deal. Even if they get 45%, all of us are still getting the tax on the 8 3/4 sales tax. I mean, all they're saying is, well, if we have that, then that means we'll have more money for maybe the operational dollars or whatever. This is kind of, very loosey-goosey about, that's when I say the specificity in this stuff is a little problematic, but they are convinced that if they can get it started, and that's the problem that we really can find ourselves in. Hey, if you get pregnant, guess what? You got to move on. You got to keep on. You got to come to the public and you got to go, you know what? You let me spend this $7.1 billion. I really need some more. What do you want me to do? You want us to stop? That doesn't make a lot of sense. We will be so had in this deal, y'all, if they get out of the ground with this $7.1 billion that it won't even be funny. Okay.
Okay. Another question, a combined question from Lisa and from Mark. One, to confirm that the red line is operating at an $18 million deficit. And then to follow up on that, where does the money come from to fund that deficit of 18 million if they're only collecting $1 million in fares, but yet the operator is charging them $19 million a year to operate it?
That's what 1 penny sales tax will do for you guys. 1 penny sales tax. When that 1 penny, that's that part of that $4.4 billion. I mean, your revenue comes from the 1 penny sales tax and from federal dollars that you get. That's where it comes from. And it comes from all of the taxpayers whenever, we go and buy things that we pay sales tax for. No, I'm of the opinion that if you're not using sales tax dollars on things that make a lot of sense, then you're throwing money away. I think that you ought to take the penny sales tax. What Cap Metro really needs to do, y'all, they need to have this community tell them, get back to what you were set up to do. You were set up to where you have 1 penny dedicated sales tax. You run the most effective, robust bus company that you can, and you make sure that you go and that you pick the people up that that have to have your service. That's where you need to concentrate on. They have taken their eyes so far off the ball over the last 20 to 25 years because they have wanted to do rail so badly. And you know what? All of your major, or a lot of your major cities in the United States have rail, and they have traffic. They have all of the things that all big cities have. Rail, I mean, you'll hear them say, well, you need everything. Well, guess what? You can't have everything. I might want to drive a Bentley. Well, guess what? I might have to drive a Chevrolet, but I sure like to drive a Bentley. You gotta put these people in place and say, this is what you ought to be doing, and you're not doing a very good job of it. So don't come asking the public for these monumental dollars to do something on wishful thinking and rolling the dice.
Thank you, Joe. So a couple more questions. This is kind of a two-part question that was sent to me. What are the challenges as to why light rail won't work here, or will it work or won't work? And how is light rail different? The orange and blue line is different from the red line, the original line.
Well, I mean, there's not a lot of difference between them. I mean, they are both pretty much light rail in use. The red line, some people might consider that more of a commuter line, but it's practically the same kind of vehicle that you're going to have on the orange and the blue lines. They throw this term out, high capacity transit. High capacity. I mean, I don't consider 1,500 people a day high capacity. Now what they would like is to say, well, let's just cram as many people in the cars as we can, but that's not what they do because that's not what people elect to do. The reason, bottom line, is that light rail doesn't work very well is it's slow, it's inflexible, and those two things, and especially the inflexibility. Most of your rail riders are what they call borrowed riders. Borrowed riders mean that rail lines don't attract a lot of new riders. They just take them off of buses and bring them onto the rail. The perfect example of what happened was when they built the light rail out of Leander, they stopped the bus route flyers out of Northwest because they really needed people to ride the rail line, and they sold part of the deal on, well, we're going to have some savings because we're not going to run the flyer buses out because people are going to be on the train. Well, it worked for about 6 months because the novelty of the red line, people got pretty giddy about it. Well, after 6 months, they realized, well, not only is the fare to ride on the train more than the bus, it necessitates my going to a spot, getting off, and then getting onto another transit vehicle to get to where I'm going. That's what the flexibility issue is with trains. Unless you have densities like you have in the Northeast, where you have hundreds of thousands of people along the line, that's where you turn public transit into mass transit. But y'all, that's not what we have. That's not what we're going to have. I love it when people say, well, millennials, they just don't like, they don't have to have cars. And I go, I love it when somebody poses that to me. I said, yeah, I said, here's the deal about a millennial. They turn 41 at some point in time. And guess what? When they turn 41, they might have a family. They might have a kid. They might want a dog. They might want a yard. They might want a swing set. I mean, you know, that's what happens. The younger people today, I mean, technology has what has been the game changer for young people is the technology. And what do they want? They want curb to curb. They love Uber, Lyft. They love to get picked up when they want to get picked up and taken where they want to be taken. And within 5 minutes, have somebody come and get them and take them back where they came from. Those are the things. Curb to curb is what works. Cat Metro did some curb to curb stuff. And it's pretty damn successful. I mean, you ought to concentrate on doing things that really make a lot of sense. But rail is not the answer to this deal.
Gerald, another question. Could you address the ballot language? What's the ballot language going to look like? Is it in any way going to, I've heard it could be ambiguous as to what you're voting for or voting against.
Well, it's not very ambiguous. Let me just read it. Now, it's got everything in it but snow cones. Approving the ad valorem tax rate of 0.5335 per $100 valuation in the city of Austin for the current year, a tax rate that is 0.0875% higher will get you, for the purpose of providing funds for a citywide traffic easing rapid transit system known as Project Connect to address traffic congestion, expand service for essential workers, reduce climate change emissions, decrease traffic fatalities, create jobs, provide access to schools, healthcare, jobs, and the airport to include neighborhoods supportive of affordable housing investments along transit corridors, and a fixed rail and bus rapid transit system, including associated road, sidewalk, bike, street lighting improvements, park and ride hubs, on-demand neighborhood circulator shuttles, and improve access for seniors and persons with disabilities. The only thing that's not in here is the Zilker Park Zephyr. I mean, and you know what? The Zilker Park Zephyr train probably carries about as many people as the Red Line. You can imagine how much fun they had sitting around going, okay, what does the language need to say so that we can have every person go, oh, you got me on that one. Oh, you got that guy on this one. That guy over there got some of this. This is a flipping joke. I mean, but it is what you get. And I had to put all these extra things in there. Now they're selling this thing as a jobs program, folks. This is really dangerous. This is what they do. John Michael, this morning was, on the program with me with ABOR and talked about it. He said, well, here you are with the same old reasons that you've always had for not supporting this. And I go, yeah, you're right. I'm guilty because you got the same old stuff that you're out here promoting, selling. I mean, all of this snake oil and all of this stuff that sounds so great. John Michael, we don't use it. I mean, Capital Metro. I mean, if you go to Capital Metro, they have 2 filled parking lots in every parking space on the street for their employees. They have, I mean, I've asked the board members, I said, why do you have free parking spaces? Why don't you take public transit? I mean, that's what you're out here promoting. I mean, why aren't you taking it? But hey, it's the same stuff. They brought light rail in 2000. It was a $960 million deal. They brought another light rail in 2014, and that was a $1.4 billion deal. And now this is a $7.1 billion deal. I didn't fight the red line, if you remember, Trey.
Right.
And the reason I didn't fight it is because I wanted people to see in town what rail would not do. And that's exactly what it's proven up. Now, they will tell you that it is the most successful thing, since, the automobile. I mean, really? Can you grow a little ridership for me here on public transit in general, and then talk to me? You can't do that. I mean, because you just can't make people, get into a form of transportation that's not what they want to do. Some people have to use it. 3.5 to 4% of the people in Austin have to have transit. And that's the reason we have to have a transit authority, and that it has to be supported by tax dollars, because you're never going to be able to pay the operational cost for what you get out of the fare box. And I'm fine with that. And I think most of us are fine with that. I'm just not for you coming back and trying to get in my pocket for something that is so crazy. And that's the reason I'm so vehemently opposed to it.
Joe, let's take a couple last questions here. I've got one from Lisa. Why do you think so many groups are reluctant to come out against Prop A?
Well, Trey, I probably ought to let you answer that, because you know the groups just like I do. I am blown away that the Chamber of Commerce came out in support of this. The Chamber of Commerce is an organization that represents mostly business people. I will say that I think that they thought that it was going to be a slam dunk. I think that they thought it was going to be a rubber stamp deal. And a few weeks ago, they took it before their executive committee, and they did pass it. The mayor was pleading with them to come out in support of it. And I think it was a 20-17 vote. Very surprising. You had 4 former board members that voted against it. I mean, anytime you get Gary Farmer, that's Mr. Chamber of Commerce, that comes out and says, I can't support that. Rika, I think that Rika is just so compromised out. I noticed that, the financial reports came out yesterday about who gave what. The mayor and his committee has raised a little over $1 million. A big engineering firm, one of the largest engineering firms in the world, gave $150,000. One of the largest commercial real estate companies gave $100,000. Let me tell you what, this is a fat hog to cut. $7.1 billion. You don't think there's not a lot of people at the trough, that want some of that? And y'all, Trey, they're friends of ours. I've asked my friends, I said, are you just thinking because you're going to get something personally out of this? Do you really think it's a good idea for the overall taxpayer? But I think that that's what's happened. And for the life of me, I don't understand how the Downtown Austin Alliance has supported it. I think that some of these office buildings, Trey, are going to really start hemorrhaging, with people not coming back, either wanting to change their leases, not taking as much space, because they're going to telework. People are going to go, I just don't need that. We have learned in 12 to 15 months that telework can work. Now, a bunch of people will come back, but you're still going to have a ton of people that's not going to be the case. And when some of these buildings just can't start leasing their space, because, that's just what we have changed to. Technology is what's done it, and it's going to continue to do it. And I'm excited to have Tesla here, because I think that Tesla is going to be one of those cutting edge companies that's going to help us do some of these things.
Gerald, one last thing here that actually is more of a comment from Mark Crone, our president, to you is, are you sure you really want to step away right now? This community needs your voice. And while I know you're retiring from office, I hope you're not going away.
No, I'm not. I'm not going away, Trey. I mean, it's too much a part of me. I love this community. I mean, other than when I grew up in Houston, going through, through high school, I've been in this town, over 50 years. Hey, Trey, you and I have talked about this before. I'm not a contrarian by nature. I mean, I'm not. I mean, let's get it done kind of a guy. Let's pull together on something. But I'm also known for, I'm going to tell you what I know you need to hear versus what I think you want to hear. And I think that that's the only way that I've survived being a Republican in Travis County. People ask me all the time, said, how have you survived with being a Republican in Travis County? And I think it's because I just cut to the chase and get down to the brass tacks. You can bring me along. I mean, I'm not such an ideologue that I won't change my mind. I mean, I haven't changed my mind on rail because it's never penciled out. It just costs so friggin' much money to build it and then to operate it. And for as few people as we have that take transit, I mean, let's carry the people that have to use transit in this town the most effective way and the most cost-effective way that we can. And that is keeping our eye on the ball of doing a rubber tire system. Now they're going to tell you, well, we got some money in. I said, yeah, I mean, in that half-page thing that you got along with all the other snow cones and things. Yeah, you're right. You got some of that stuff in there as well. But you ought to be spending your 1 penny sales tax on that. That's what you ought to be doing. And you know what? Step aside a little bit and let's make sure, or let's continue to keep our eye on building our roads, because the best thing for public transit is for us to make sure that we have a comprehensive road system. So public transit works, so cops work better, so fire trucks work better, all of the emergency vehicles that we have to have, we need to have a good comprehensive road system. And some of these corridors that they're talking about building these things on, Trey, they're going to take capacity out of the road. You can't help but take capacity out of the road if you're going to put something down the middle of it. And then you start asking merchants what they think about the build out phase of building something like rail. You go to Houston, Texas, and you talk to the people on Main Street or Fannin where they put that light rail, they will tell you they wiped so many businesses out. If you go to SoCo is vehemently opposed to putting rail down South Congress because they've got such, a cool, iconic community out there. They know they can't withstand the building phase, and they know that most people aren't going to come to their businesses via public transit. I mean, that's just, unfortunately the way that it is, but Trey, we need to defeat this thing. And I think that if people know what it is that they are talking about, then we will defeat it. I started 4 months ago. I created the PAC, Our Mobility, Our Future PAC, and I set out to raise $400,000. I can't raise the $1 million, $2 million that they can raise because, I've got to go to individuals. I put the first $20,000 of my own money in it. That's how strongly I felt about this being such a bad program. I mean, if there's somebody out there listening and you really want to help me, please go to, Our Mobility, Our Future PAC, and donate something. This is didn't mean to get on here to solicit, but, I'm telling you that I'm doing everything within my fiber to do what I think is really good for this community. And the best thing we can do for this community is to defeat Prop A so that we don't waste all of this money, raise people's taxes, and siphon money out of this community where we could spend it on something where it would really be bang for the buck. So, Trey, I really appreciate y'all giving me the time.
Gerald, Gerald, Boma Austin, thanks you very much for doing this. This is very informative. I took meticulous notes. I heard things today that I missed last night when I was on your Zoom at the Headliners Club. But so again, thank you for this information. Like we said, it's been recorded. We're going to post it in a couple of days, send it around in the membership so that we have lots of viewership, so that we're making sure that we're doing our part to educate our members on what this means and what this means to their tax bills.
Great.
And for their tenants. Amy, anything you want to wrap with before we go?
No, I think that's it. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much. I'll get that
Trey,
recorded
Amy,
now.
let me give one more thing. Write this down. I mean, my office goes crazy. My cell phone is 512-917-5428. Anybody that's got any kind of a call, any kind of a question, you call me. I will talk to you anytime. I mean, 24/7. This is important enough. And if there are things that you didn't understand of what I had to say, then please call me, because I welcome anybody to give me a call. Thank you very much. I appreciate y'all.
I appreciate Gerald saying that, because let me tell you, to wrap, the only two public officials I've ever known that will give out their cell phone to anybody and publicly is Gerald Daugherty and Chief Art Acevedo. Same thing. They have that in common.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gerald.
Thank y'all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.